Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Kavon Ward started her advocacy for Bruce's Beach on Juneteenth 2020 to shed light on Black history in Manhattan Beach, specifically the land stolen from Black landowners Willa and Charles Bruce. In large part because of Kavon's relentless advocacy, the Bruce's heirs made history as the first African Americans to have their lands returned to them after it was stolen. Kavon discusses what justice for the Bruce family means and what reparations for Black and Indigenous people look like as it pertains to America making amends for stealing Black and Indigenous land. Kavon, who founded a group called Justice for Bruce's Beach in June 2020 to support the family's calls for restitution, has spoken out about the family's recent decision to sell the land back to the county for $20 million. She joins us now. Kavon, thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Let me just right off the bat, I read where you said that you did not believe the Bruce family would find peace in their decision to part with the land. Could you expand on that just a little bit?
I think that was not what I said.
Okay, so
I think
somebody
it was
misquoted.
It was quoted incorrectly, I believe, in the Washington Post. What I said is something to the extent that, when justice is served, there should be some peace. And unfortunately, I did not believe that the Bruces would find peace taking up space in a racist Manhattan Beach. And that is indicative of the fact that despite them having the land back, they did not have the control to do what they wanted to do with the land. The zoning laws prevented them from doing that. And the city of Manhattan Beach has the power to change that, and they will not do it. In fact, they have not even apologized to the Bruce family.
Yeah, and that's a big issue that they haven't offered any type of apologies. Talk about why that too is important.
I mean, folks in the family say, we don't need an apology. We just need them to do the right thing. But for me, I think an apology is important for them, right? Like apologizing, not just acknowledging what the city of Manhattan Beach did and continues to do as it relates to just oppressing Black people and being anti-Black. I think saying I'm sorry it starts the healing process. Yeah. And hearing I'm sorry, whether folks realize it or not, does something to the spirit and to the soul. And so I think that if we're going to start making amends and making sure that we are doing the right thing for Black people, at the very least, Black people need to hear an apology, need to hear that, yes, the country did this to you all. The country continues to do this to you all. And we apologize. And when we apologize, what we mean is that we won't do it again and that we will make amends in a way that you feel comfortable. The people who have been harmed feel comfortable.
Yeah, and Kavon is also the founder, we should mention, of Where Is My Land, an organization that seeks to help secure restitution for Black families who have had their lands taken from them. And we know that throughout history, a whole lot of land has been taken and stolen from African Americans. Let's talk a little bit about the Bruce property, because I know it consists of, at least reportedly, because again, your quote in the Washington Post and what you just explained, it's a totally different meaning. So let's get it straight. And that's what the Black press is. That's what we do, right? We want truth. And so the Bruce property consists, we understand, of two adjacent beachfront lots. And Mrs. Bruce purchased one of them in 1912. So this goes back a long way, right?
Yes, absolutely, it does. And what they did is when they bought that first plot of land, they established a small business there so that they could earn enough money to buy a second plot of land and ultimately create this beachfront resort, not just for Black people. It just so happened that Black people were the ones who were denied access to beachfront property up and down the coast. And so that was the safe haven for Black folks. But it was never a space where they were like, this is just for Black people. All were welcome. And so, yes, that is essentially what happened. And now, the two plots of land, and I want to clear something up as well. I think people think that, the Bruces sold all this land. And a lot of people think that it is the park, what is now named Bruce's Beach Park, that belongs to the Bruces. And that is just not the case. Bruce's Beach Park is still owned by the city of Manhattan Beach. The 2 plots of land the Bruces owned are closer to the water. They're on the Strand between 26th and 27th Street in Manhattan Beach. And what sits on those 2 plots of land right now is a lifeguard training facility. And so it is their land was not the whole block. It's just 2 plots of land underneath that the lifeguard training facility sits on. It's not even the entire lifeguard training facility.
And can you briefly tell us who were the Bruces? A little bit about the Bruces.
Absolutely. They were Black entrepreneurs. They were very family oriented. They were community leaders. They were folks who I always say they were used by the Most High to bring Black people together at a time where there was so much sadness and discrimination and devastation, and there's just so much fighting Black people had to do just to survive. And so they were peace, right? They created this space that provided peace for people, and they were trailblazers. And it's just unfortunate that, they did everything the right way. People always tell us that we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Right.
And they did, right? They probably didn't even own boots, but they pulled themselves up. And those boots, if they had them, were taken, the laces were taken, the socks were taken, and they were forced off of their land only to run further east in California, where they were cooks in someone else's kitchen.
Wow.
How is that fair? Black people, we always, always, always try to do the right thing. We always try to pull ourselves up by those bootstraps and make a way out of no way. And we do. And whenever we do and we're successful with it, it's either burnt down, taken away, or our character is assassinated. It's sad. It's almost as if people can't deal with the fact that Black folks are happy and winning.
Yeah. And this, obviously, the land was stolen at a time where it was certainly not uncommon when Black folks owned anything that it was being taken away. But what was the context for the city of Manhattan Beach taking this land?
Well, they did it through eminent domain, right? So essentially, this land was purchased. There was a whole bunch of folks in the neighborhood making a fuss about Black people having land and then inviting other Black people to enjoy leisure on that land. And so the KKK involved, there were all these 24-hour calling campaigns where, Charles and Willa Bruce were being called and threatened and harassed and told that they need to leave their property or they were going to die or they were going to be harmed. And, the city of Manhattan Beach partook in that. And they created these 10-minute parking meters that made it impossible for anyone to get out of their car, sit, relax, enjoy. And you know what I'm saying? There were 10-minute parking meters. The access to the beach was roped off to the point where people had to walk a half a mile in either direction to get to the water. Wow. So they created all of these hurdles and barriers for Black people to just relax and enjoy the ocean, the ocean that was given to us by God. And then, once Charles and Willa Bruce, they didn't back down. And it wasn't like they said, you know what, I'm just going to take the $1,400 and leave. They fought. They didn't want to do it. And then when there was this resistance and they didn't want to willingly leave, the land was condemned. And then it was taken. Yeah, they gave them about $1,425. And then they ultimately condemned the land and took it through eminent domain and said they needed it for a public purpose. They needed to build a park, and there was never a park built on that land.
Wow. And so all these years, this issue has been out there, and then you stepped in. Share a little bit about that. When you stepped in, what was the motivating factor? How did you get connected to this?
It was so crazy. It was shortly after George Floyd was murdered. And then, of course, we were dealing with COVID, so we were all confined to our homes. And I think for me, I was looking for community, right? You know, I used to be what my friends used to call me, a poetic activist on the East Coast when I lived on the East Coast. So I would always write poetry about just how Black lives don't matter, and the murder of Black unarmed people. And so when I saw what happened to George Floyd, I went to that space of anger again. And I looked for community, and I tried to find it on, you know, different mom groups and things of that nature. But then I remember when I started posting on those mom groups, my posts were being deleted. Other Black moms' posts were being deleted. So we decided to create our own group called Anti-Racist Moms Around the South Bay. And prior to creating that group, 2 different people sent me a blog post about Bruce's Beach. And the thing that, you know, I thought was like, how did I not know about this? And I live in Manhattan Beach, right? How do I not know? So it was clearly hidden on purpose. And so when I learned about it, the group and I decided to have a picnic to just illuminate what had happened to them, and just to educate people within the community about what happened to Black lives in that particular community. And then on that day, Patricia and Vivian Bruce, who were cousins, they came to the picnic. And then Spirit just moved me to say, like, you know, there were conversations about whether or not the inaccurate plaque that sits in Bruce's Beach Park should be swapped out, if that's what I wanted to see and what the group wanted to see. And then Spirit moved me to just say, you know, I want to see the plaque change, and I want to see policy change that would deed the land back to the Bruce family. And so from that moment on, I just moved in that direction and started to figure out ways and strategies to make that happen. And so, here we are.
Yeah. And so they hadn't thought about that part of it at that point, about figuring out how to get it back?
No, I don't know that. No, I remember there was this whole push to get the name changed to Bruce's Beach, the name of the park changed, and that they were successful with that. But when I spoke to one of the family members who had been doing research on it, I think there was just like this desire to get some type of financial justice from the city of Manhattan Beach. And I don't think that it ever occurred to anyone to demand that the land be returned, because
something like
it
that
had
never
happened
before.
Right? Yeah. And so that's why I always say, and it wasn't like I was this genius and said, you know, I want to get the land back. It was like I said, it was Spirit, something in me, the Most High working through me to say that and then move in that direction. So.
And that's important too. When what you just saying, you're talking about plaques, and maybe the right plaque, or maybe this or that, more less tangible things, or things that will just be reminders. But it's
very performative,
right? Yeah. And so your thinking was, we need to move beyond this. We need to look at the big picture, and we really need to get some sort of reparations or justice or somehow, right? And that mindset seems to be where we need to collectively be.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. And so some people say that with this $20 million, and not the $20 million, let me backtrack. Some people are saying that getting the land back was a sort of reparations, or at least an important part of the reparation struggle. What do you say to that?
I mean, I am very conscious about not trying to lump that part of it up into reparations, and as it relates to what society believes reparation is, and what the historical definition of it is, right? Because and the only reason why I say that is because not only does that family deserve, and other families who have had land stolen from them deserve to reclaim their land, right? So that's land reclamation. They also deserve to get reparations, right? Whatever that might be, that, you know, that the state of California decides, or that the US decides, right? So there's 2 separate pots that they should be drawing from,
like a civil court, right? Compensatory and punitive, right?
Right. I mean, and that's all that they should get, that for the land taken, and they should also get that for being the descendants of enslaved folks, right? That's what I'm saying, right? Like, there's a pot of money that all descendants of enslaved folks should get, or a pot of repair that all descendants of enslaved folks should get, right? And then there's separate pots for people who have had their land stolen. And so don't think that just because you're giving stolen land back that they shouldn't be able to have access to that other pot.
Right.
So it's an and for me, not an or.
And the fact that you were instrumental, and instrumental might even be putting it lightly, but you were instrumental in making this happen. There's, as we've been speaking, there are so many cases. Is this just the beginning for you?
It is. I mean, I started Where Is My Land, which is the national organization to address the submissions I've been getting. Justice for Bruce's Beach was focused specifically on helping the Bruce family, and Where Is My Land is for all families across this country. And so, yes, right now we have close to 500 claims. So I don't imagine that I'll be done anytime in my lifetime. So
and where are some of, can you tell us where some of these claims are?
We've got claims. No, we've got several other claims in California, but we also have claims in Texas. We have claims in Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. We've got claims in Alabama. We've got claims even on the East Coast where people don't think it was that paramount. We have it in, I think, some cases in Virginia.
It would stand to reason that the South, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, so it's all over. It's all over. So we do have our work cut out for us.
And this was a case, as you've already stated, they tried to force the Bruces out. Then the 10-cent meter was really, you had me there. But this eminent domain. But there has been other tactics throughout the centuries, the decades, the centuries of how land has been stolen from African Americans. Can you talk a little bit about the various ways?
I mean, one of the things that I constantly am just like upset and surprised about is the fact that like we are in communications with families who actually have deeds to their land, who have proof that they own this land, and still the courts were okay with the land being taken from them. We've got cases where big oil companies saw that the Black land was sat on oil and literally just used threats and death threats to remove them from their land, and they just took over, right? And a lot of these cases, people felt like they needed to leave because they feared for their lives and their families' lives. And so they left. Other ways it was done, it was through trickery, right? Like trickery. Let me have you move over here so you can do some work and earn some money for your family, knowing that they were going to try to take the land, knowing that the family wasn't going to be on the land because they were somewhere else doing work, making sure that the courts mailed letters to them at the old address so that they couldn't answer to them. And the next thing you know, their land is gone.
Wow.
We've got fraudulent paperwork signed. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways that we've been done wrong and ripped off, and it's just ridiculous and upsetting.
Yeah, and perhaps that's one of the bigger obstacles in this country to reparations, right? The fact that it would have to be some admitting of some nefarious criminal behavior that many just don't want to own up to, right?
Right. I mean, and it's more than just admitting. That's the first part. Yeah, admit. Okay. Now, how do you feel about it? Are you sorry? Are you apologetic about it? And if you are, what do you plan to do to make it better? How do you plan to right this wrong? If you're not, then if you're not sorry about it, then you need to dig deep down within yourself and really think about that.
Yeah.
Right. I hear so many people, especially in Manhattan Beach, well, the Bruces shouldn't get anything. We shouldn't be responsible for paying reparations. We didn't do anything. It was so long ago. We had nothing to do with that today, but you're still benefiting from it, right? You're still benefiting from the harm that your ancestors caused.
That is a great point. Because you're right. You hear that a lot. Well, how do you get reparations when, the people today, they had nothing to do with it? But you just said something that I don't hear many remark on, is that people are still benefiting. They're still benefiting from slavery. they're still benefiting from all of the
a
Jim
failed
Crow laws.
Reconstruction, right? A failed Reconstruction era that they're benefiting from. You still got white people benefiting from, what is it called when they set aside a certain amount of slots for African Americans to be able to take advantage of? What is it called? It was something that was, but I forget what it was called. But white people still benefit. White women specifically still benefit from that, and it's just so sad because it's like every time we get something, or we are our harm has been acknowledged and there's some policy change that benefits Black people, white people always try to figure out a way to benefit from it.
Yeah.
There's always some loophole for them to be able to take advantage of it. And there's always an issue when we try to center the fight for Black lives and Black land. Everyone's always asking, well, what about these people? What about those people? But no one's asking those people, what about Black people when they take up their fights?
Yeah.
And so I'm just so tired of everybody of having to apologize for fighting solely for Black lives and Black land. I'm not going to apologize for it. It is something that no one was addressing, because it's always the BIPOC, Black, and we always have to be included and lumped in with everyone else. But for Black Lives Matter, there wouldn't have been, just this centering of Black lives specifically without it being lumped up in something else.
Yeah. That again, a statement so true. You're right. Always lumped with something. It's never just about Black America. It's always, you're adding this group or that group, and it becomes everybody's fight or struggle, when really boy, oh boy, I'm starting to preach, right? Let me ask you this. What do you see as the implications, the historical significance? I'll get it together. But with this, with the situation with the Bruce's land, I'm sure you probably have heard from a lot of people on this. And as you've already spoken, folks have reached out to you now. They would like to get their land back. But the significance of this, talk about that in the context that they not only did they get the land back, but they were able to turn around and whether people agree with them or not for selling it back to Manhattan Beach, they did, and it's $20 million.
Well, I just want to correct something. They did not sell it back to Manhattan Beach. They sold it back to LA County, because LA County owned those 2 plots of land. The city of Manhattan Beach has yet to do anything to remedy the past harms they did to that family. The city of Manhattan Beach are cowards in my eyes. So they don't get to take any credit for any of this, at all. The county did the right thing.
Right. And selling it back to the county. Like I said, there are some, I've read some people, they have mixed feelings about it, but it really doesn't that just come down to the fact that you have this asset, and they're free to do. The point was that they were free to do what they should have been free to do what they wanted with this land from the get-go. Right.
They should have. And now they're free to do what they want to do with it now. I mean, like you said, everybody doesn't agree with it. But the decision is not up to anyone but that family, and they decided. And so here we have it.
Yeah. And what's the next stage in getting justice for other Black families who were unjustly deprived of their land?
When you say what the next stage is, are you asking?
What comes next? Do you envision this, for instance, for example, you envision other municipalities, other jurisdictions taking notice and saying, you know what?
Yes.
We need to correct this.
Yes, I do. And I also see other municipalities and states being resistant to this. And so I see more fight moving forward. But what I am hopeful for is that California continues to do the right thing for other Black families who have had land stolen within this state, because there are a lot of them. And so I am hopeful that this state continues to take the lead on this initiative and do the right thing, not just for the Bruces, but for so many others.
Yeah. And where do you see the biggest fight? I mean, California has, with what Los Angeles County has done, that is, they've kind of set the tone there for the West Coast, or for at least for California anyway.
Right.
But do you see it being more of a challenge in other places?
Absolutely, definitely the South. We know we are like gearing up for the South, hardcore. But we also think that another challenge is going to be with oil companies. There's a lot of stolen land and a lot of oil companies who have stolen a lot of land from Black folk.
And just think about the money that they've made, these oil companies. That is going to be a fight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, if anybody can get it done, I mean, you've done something here. You've made history, and you're a spoken word artist.
I am. I am. I'm so many things.
and here you are, a fantastic. Someone named you Woman of the Year.
Yeah, Senator Bradford.
And a spoken word artist, but yet it seems such a huge, not seems, it is such a huge impact in activism.
I've always been an activist. What people don't realize is that shortly after, I used to be a Congressional Black Caucus fellow on the Hill.
Oh,
and after that, I started lobbying for children, youth, and families. So I used to I have a policy experience. I have a background in it. And then when I transitioned to the arts, people started calling me the poetic activist. So I've always been an activist. Now, interestingly enough, and ironically, when I moved to California, I was trying to escape activism.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to escape activism only to be called back into it. And I always tell people in retrospect, I'm just like, everything that has happened before that I was trying to run from is what actually prepared me for this fight. So it's amazing just how the Most High uses people.
Yeah, well, and you said you were running from it. However, it's in your blood, obviously. Yeah. What was your upbringing like? Was your parents activists? Were your family members? Where did it come from?
It came from this just being treated unfairly in my own home. There was actual segregation in our own home, but not based on race. It was based off of who were my stepfather's kids and who weren't. And so I constantly had to stick up for myself and my two older siblings who were not my stepfather's children. And I just remember my mom used to say, "You're like, be quiet. You're not a goddamn Martin Luther King or Malcolm X," right? I just remember those words because I used to always like, this is not fair. This is not right. So it's been in my blood for a very, very long time. But I grew up in Harlem, very, very poor during the crack epidemic. I had 5 of the siblings. And so, I mean, no, we did not. I did not grow up privileged. I did not have family who were activists. In fact, I was the first in my family to even graduate from high school and the only one in my family to go to college. So I guess I've always had that fighting spirit. And I've also just, deep down inside knew that there was more for me, and just was really conscious about like just this purpose-driven life. I've always lived a purpose-driven life for as far as I can remember. Like everything that I did in life had to make sense and it had to benefit my people. I've always been passionate about it because I've seen how we've been harmed and treated, and I see it still happening. And I just feel like, what is the point of me being here if I'm not going to stand up for what's right? That it's just something in me. I can't explain it outside of that.
Well, what you were able to accomplish in pretty much a very short period of time, 2.5-year period from Juneteenth 2020 to today with the Bruce land, that's extremely impressive. No, you're not Martin Luther King. No, you're not Malcolm X. You're Kavon Ward.
Thank you.
And it is amazing, Kavon. We are just really looking forward to what you have in store next. Is there I mean, you probably have a schedule. Is there a fight that you're going to be doing next that you're focused on, or is there multiple fronts that you do at one time?
Multiple fronts, and I have an amazing team, which is how I've been able to make it happen. But folks need to understand that we need donations to keep making this happen. So, Bruce family, if you're listening, help us help other people. You got $20 million now.
Well, look, that should be a no-brainer for the Bruce family, right? Where
should.
is my land? Is there a website or a way they can contact?
Yes, www.whereismyland.org. And we're also on all social media platforms, but most active on our Instagram page. And, you know, we keep people abreast of all of our next fights and you know, calls to actions, mostly through our social media pages and newsletters. So subscribe.
Well, you know, whatever folks can donate, seems like it's worth the fight. It's worth the whatever they can come out of their wallets with. Kavon Ward, we really appreciate you coming on the Black Press of America's Let It Be Known. It's a privilege to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me again. Appreciate you.